Ebonie Durham, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so give us the quick intro on who you are and tell us a little bit about GLA before we get started.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm Ebonie Durham. I am a third generation Chicagoan, born and raised on the west side of Chicago in a similar community as the one GLA sits in. I've attended public school my entire life. I'm a first generation college student. My career in education has primarily been in school operations. I helped to found a high school for Noble Schools. That's a network here in Chicago. And I led their network operations for 7 years. In 2022, I joined GLA as their executive director. And so I've been here 4 years now. GLA is located on Chicago's southeast side in the South Chicago community. We serve South Shore and South Chicago residents. We are a kindergarten through eighth grade elementary school. We serve about 576 students here. We're a predominantly Black student population, and our school performs in the top 20% of all Illinois schools.
That's amazing. I love it. So you bring an operational background, and it's always unique to talk to executive directors who come through the operations side of the house because you get folks who come from the academic side of the house, and then oftentimes people who've run operations. And I feel like this is biased because we have a lot of ops folks on the podcast, but the ops folks bring a unique lens into leadership. And for those that don't know, Chicago charter schools, Noble, where Ebony led operations for a number of years, is I think the largest charter network in Chicago, or one of the largest. So that's complex in scale and size, and so it's a unique environment to be coming out of. And I say that because one of our topic we're going to get into today is about mobilizing partnerships, which can sometimes be operationally complex, and you've got a lot of moving parts and different parties. And so I'm excited to unpack this concept with you. And just to frame up the topic a little bit, I wanted to start by getting your perspective on partnerships in general. And when you think about partnerships at Great Lakes Academy, what comes to mind, and what do you feel like, differentiates a strategic partner from, say, any other vendor maybe the school works with?
Yeah, so great question. I think one of the things that immediately comes to mind for me is alignment around our mission, vision, and values. We have a very clear intention to serve our community well. And so when I think about a partnership versus a vendor, they typically have more of a understanding of our culture and our community and what the needs of our community are in the work that we do specifically. It's really important that the work that they do is tailored to the community that we serve. And so that's how it becomes more of a partnership than just a general service a vendor may offer to any school organization.
And how do you feel like partnerships, because you mentioned, mission, vision, and values, those are long-term strategic priorities for the organization, probably tied to your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan. How do those partnerships support your mission? Maybe give us an example or two of, hey, here's the mission, vision, and values, and here's how that specific mission or value gets translated into a community partnership that supports that value.
Well, I would say in terms of college prep from kindergarten, that's one of the things that's really important to the model that we have here at Great Lakes
Okay.
Academy. When I think about a partnership that we may have, it's important for them to understand that college is in the future of our children. They see them as college going, and it's something that they can have access to. So we have a really great partnership with Notre Dame that provides college access programming, high school access programming to our middle schoolers so that they can prepare for great high school programs. And that comes out of their economic opportunity lab at Notre Dame. And so
Very
them
cool.
being aligned and understanding that children that come from the community we serve need a bit more support so that they can access high quality options for high school and then ultimately college. And so that's just really an example of a partnership that really aligns with the mission that we have for our kids as it relates to college going and the type of education experience we'd like for them to have.
I love it. So let's talk about partnership strategy a little bit because I think there's likely a lot of other leaders who might be listening to this that are wondering how they can similarly stand up partnerships that are aligned with their mission and have an impact on the students and communities they serve. So I want to unpack partnership strategy a little bit with you. Let's start with the basics. How do you, like you mentioned in your Notre Dame example, you guys are aligned. They understand the students you serve. They know that maybe these additional supports are required or beneficial in impacting the long term goal you have of preparing these students to be college ready. How do you decide which student needs are things that can be handled internally with your existing team's capacity versus external partnerships? Because I feel like there's kind of that tension there of like, okay, should we take this on or would it make sense for us to, like, we really need a great community partner execute on this particular aspect of our mission? How do you guys think about deciding that?
Well, I think it comes to thinking about breadth versus depth. When it's something that really affects a significant percentage of our student population, we want to try to build internal capacity. If that's working with a partner to build internal capacity, but we want to be able to have ongoing support within our organization because it's going to be an ongoing need. But when we look to external partners, sometimes it's usually related to when a need is high, but it may impact a smaller percentage of our student population.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And so if we take that as the framework or the criteria, how does that, like, how do you start to translate that into a potential partnership strategy? Like, well, I guess maybe to take a step back, how do you decide which partnerships are worth pursuing? Because I think one of the challenges is every partnership requires energy in order for that partnership to be effective. And I imagine with your team, there's a little bit of like, okay, this is important. We know this needs to get done, but who's going to go find the right partner? Who's going to manage the partnership? There's kind of like a administrative ecosystem that inevitably comes with a new partner. How do you ensure that a potential partnership is going to be beneficial versus maybe distracting from a different goal that you have at the organization?
Yeah, definitely. So you talked a little bit about like long-term plans, 5 or 10 year strategic plans. And as an organization and thinking about the sustainability, those are great to have. But one thing that's true about how I lead at GLA is that we're developing a playbook every single year. Our leadership team gets together and we create a playbook. And a part of that playbook is asking ourselves, how will we succeed at our short-term goals for that
Mhm.
year? And a part of that is creating strategic priorities. And those strategic priorities, which sometimes I call them strategic anchors, that's the place from where we make all of our decisions for that year. That is the place that we go back to decide whether or not a decision we're making, like who we're partnering with, is truly going to help us succeed in the goals that we made, or if it's truly some sort of pragmatic decision that we're making just because it might be a nice to have sort of thing. And so it's important not just to have a long-term organizational strategy, but annually we come together and create a strategy that's going to be more accessible to our leadership team, to our staff, that gets us making decisions about things like partnerships that are aligned with the goals that we set.
And and so does that mean for specific partnerships, you all have goals tied to that partnership in terms of student outcomes or sort of like KPIs for each partnership? How do you set up those shorter term anchors and where do partners fit into that? Just maybe practically speaking, how do you translate that into maybe what I'm trying to get at is how do you make sure the partnership is effective? I guess
Mhm.
the question, right? Because like
Yeah.
you said, there's probably tons of partnerships that would be nice to have, but you have goals and you're trying to accomplish those goals with your staff. And so how do partners tie into that?
Yeah, so I think it's much easier to do with academic interventions, right? To have measurable student outcomes because you can look directly at student growth. But what we know is, and the research also supports this, is that getting kids access to various services and supports will ultimately have a positive impact on their academic performance. So when I'm thinking about partners, and these are the people we typically partner with related to enrichment or behavioral health, we're actually looking at data related to attendance and behavior to see if we're getting the outcomes that we want. And so often students who are receiving these interventions or having some sort of partnership interaction, they're cohort grouped, and we're looking at various data metrics to see if their experience with that partner is translating to some sort of measurable outcome.
Right. So you can track of this cohort over time. Are we moving the needle on their daily attendance, or are we moving the needle on, their participation in XYZ, program? So you're able to see if the partnership has a measurable impact.
Yes.
Okay, very cool. What do you feel like helps to maybe from a leadership mindset standpoint or from a staff mindset standpoint, what do you feel like helps mobilize community partners? Because w- I think in the school setting, there's never a shortage of need, it feels like, and there are partners in the community, no matter what community you're in, that could potentially be strategic partners. How do you go out and mobilize those partners? Like, maybe give us an example of, "Hey, we identified this need and this is the partner we thought we wanted," and like how did you go have that conversation or go get to that partner and sell them on, "Hey, this is our vision and mission and it really aligns with your vision and mission, like we should partner on this."
Well, I think a good example is a partnership we have with a behavioral health provider. It's a community organization called Touch of Wholeness. And currently, they have a designated space in our building where they provide mental health counseling services to some of our youngest students, typically kindergarten through fourth, but we're expanding programming to some of our middle school students. And they have 4 days a week where we've created space for them. I mentioned that we created space for them because I think the thing that leaders need to do is open the doors to their schools for collaboration. We can go out. I could go and talk to a partner and say, like, hey, I would love to collaborate for you. But what are we doing on the back end? And maybe this is where my operations background comes in. How am I creating the conditions for the partnerships to be successful? And so, what that looked like for us was purchasing a Zen booth so that that
What's
partner.
a what's a Zen booth? Give me the quick.
Zen booth, you see them in some of the fancier office spaces where there may be like a two-seater or a single phone booth or a six-person conference room, these mobile kind of office spaces
Okay,
that you
yeah.
can set up in different open space areas. And so we actually purchased 2 of them, and they're dedicated to, support services for student health and wellness, and one of them is the Touch of Wholeness office. When we first started the partnership with them, they were only coming, 1 day a week. We had They were taking our principal's office, and so it was like, "How do we figure out how to make this partnership work in a way where we're gonna get the most out of this organization, and
Mm,
they're gonna feel like they're giving the most to our school because they have such an aligned mission for their organization. They are specifically founded to serve our student population and their parents. And so just creating the conditions for the partnership to exist is something
right.
that is a way in which I think you can successfully mobilize those community partners. We can't go out into the community and ask them to have everything sort of boxed up and ready to go, being flexible. So that first year was a little rough, but now, 4 years later, they have dedicated space in our building. They're here 4 times a week. We've been able to expand services to our families. Some of our staff members are now taking advantage of their services. And so just really having an open mind about opening the doors to your school and creating intentional space for those partners, it really helps the partnership blossom. Um, an Another thing just about mindset, I would say, is that leaders should be considering switching to more of an abundance mindset. It's important not to have a deficit mindset when thinking about partnerships. I know that often we go to partnerships to fill gaps, but if we think about what's possible and what can truly be, I would love to have even more space for programming like Touch of Wholeness. But if I can't envision it for my school, then it's never going to happen.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. And just to stay on this behavioral health partnership for a little bit, because I this is a great example of something practical you all have implemented, and over time, it's blossomed over the 4 years. Give us the background a little bit, because I think you touched on this earlier in the conversation around, hey, we're looking not just at what do the academic grades tell us, we're looking at what are the conditions by which our students are coming to school, or the conditions which behaviorally we might be able to impact. What was the initial impetus for the touch of wholeness? Like that first year, you said it was a little rough, but presumably there was some conversation or some catalyst for you to connect with their team or vice versa. Like, take us behind the scenes. What prompted that relationship? And then maybe give us like one or two nuggets on what you feel like helped um that partnership to continue to blossom. I think the mobile Zen office or whatever it was called, the
Zen Brew.
Zen booth is a great example. I imagine they love coming to your school because they're like, we have this beautiful office
Yeah.
Ebony and team set up for us. But yeah, maybe take us behind the scenes that specific partnership a little bit, just in terms of investment rationale, and then some of the things that sort of have helped that program continue to blossom.
Yeah, so background, I came to GLA in 2022 after, working for Noble Schools, and this is just one school. GLA is a single site, but for me it's really about having impact. I actually live down the street within walking distance of my school. My principal does as well. And one of the major things that I think we as educators um, learned during the pandemic was that we got an opportunity to have a more in-depth look at some of the struggles that our families were having. We knew that they existed and we tried to support them, but the pandemic sort of exacerbated the issues that they were facing. And so for me as a school leader, coming back into schools, I wanted to reject a mindset that I hear sometimes in education where it's like schools can't do everything. And my response to that, but what if we tried, right?
Right.
What if we it goes back to that
That
abundance
abundance
mindset that I was
mindset.
talking
Yeah,
about,
that's right.
what I have to give, I'm gonna give, and I'll try to do even more. And so my first year here at GLA, I started the initiative called the School of Care Initiative. And the School of Care Initiative is about acknowledging that schools are human development spaces and not just academic centers. I believe that in order for a child to learn, before learning can happen, they must be safe, warm, dry, fed, and well. Like, we cannot ignore the humanity of the children, and if we are to educate them, we have to educate them in spaces that are caring and nurturing. So it was a natural investment for us to make mental health improvements for our staff and our students. When I first got to GLA, they only had one social worker for the entire school population. And where we are today, we have two social workers, partnerships with the local colleges and universities. We have at least one social work intern here every day. We have this amazing partnership that we have with the Touch of Wholeness group. We partner with Open Seat. We partner with our local Pilsen Wellness Center to provide support to families. And we're always trying to create opportunities for collaboration because this is a need that people have. And we may not be able to serve it in full here, but at least it can be a stepping stone or a place for access.
I love it. So, if that's the background on how you got to a partnership like Touch of Wholeness, you mentioned, today you've got the Touch of Wholeness partnership, you've got the additional social work support, you've got the part-time social worker, you've got the open seat relationship. if you had to think about, maybe either the operational side or what allowed those partnerships to continue to flourish, what do you feel like, uh, were maybe 1 or 2 things just operationally that helped those programs flourish for someone who's thinking like, "Oh, I'm thinking of the school that tried to launch a partnership and maybe it faltered a little bit, or maybe they're in that year 1 where like, all right, this isn't going quite as great as we had hoped. What's maybe the encouragement you would have to for folks to continue to invest in that partnership, or a tip or 2 on continuing to allow those partnerships to execute well?
Well, I would say, and I'm thinking specifically about OpenSea because I've heard about really great experiences with OpenSea,
And
and we
what's OpenSea? Because I don't think we explained that for the audience.
so OpenSea is a organization that provides emotional tutoring to students. And think of it as sort of academic tutoring. It's virtual one on one with a counselor, and they support students with a variety of issues related to their emotional health and well being. And so, similarly to academic tutoring, where you may be skills building, in emotional tutoring, you're working on some of those things like social skills building, navigating life changes, and they work directly with our social workers in partnership with our families. And they provide really, I would say, a tier one type of intervention for low level support, mental health support for children that may just need oftentimes just someone to talk to in a non-judgmental space. And it's been a game changer for us, particularly around the relationships between students amongst their peers and being able to sort of
Mhm.
navigate adolescence. In terms of nuggets, when I think about OpenSea, one of the reasons it's been so successful here is because of the strength of our operations.
Mm.
Um, the partnerships that we decide to move forward with have to have as similarly a strong operational um, way of doing business. You know, we take ourselves very seriously here at GLA. And so that's one of the things as well that helps us differentiate between what's going to be a good partner and who's not going to be a good partner. We could talk for days about systems, but the people operate within the systems. And so
Right.
making sure that the folks are all aligned, committed, willing to say the hard things, willing to revisit, pivot, come to the table, that's something that is really important to the success. And so I think the nugget will be you're only going to be able to partner successfully with partners who operate as well or better than your organization. If they don't have the operational foundation that is as strong or better than your organization, then it's not necessarily going to be a partnership that works out well.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't necessarily wanna be the guinea pig for their
Yes.
partnership strategy. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about another partnership because I think bringing these specific partnerships to life helps, helps provide some context and some transferable skills for others who are thinking about their partnership strategy. I wanted to ask you about food and nutrition. You mentioned this, was a huge part of what you all were doing during COVID, but also just in general. I know a lot of schools end up just outsourcing meals, and that's not the case at GLA. Tell us a little bit about why and sort of how you think about nutrition as part of your overall strategy.
Yeah. So kids you want kids to be excited about your school. You want them to be excited about your school experience. You want them showing up. It's not an accident that our attendance rate is over 95%, right? And it's not just because we have amazing teachers, right? It's because the entire program is something that the kids look forward to. And it really goes back to our vision. We want them to be excited and we want them to have a great breakfast and lunchroom experience. You know, I've been to some private schools where food service is just top notch and they have amazing bathrooms and they have amazing programs. And so for us, we want to provide that experience to our kids too. I believe that there's a universal experience that kids should have in schools, and one of them is around great meal service.
Amen. I love it. It seems like something everyone can agree on. Why would we not want that for our students? How does this come to life? Like, give us the partnership strategy or execution breakdown of bringing that vision to life.
So, our food service operator is actually a woman minority business owner, a caterer, and we are one of her only Chicago clients.
Okay, interesting.
Right. And so all of our other clients are in the suburbs, and we are their only Chicago client. And all of our meals are prepared in house in our full kitchen. We had an expansion back in 2021, and it is not just an operational function. It's really an academic strategy as well. So we're talking about healthy bodies, healthy minds. We're providing a cultural and nutritional education. Growing up the way I did, there are pieces of my education that I didn't realize were missing until I was an adult.
Hmm.
And one of those things are related to nutrition. You hear the saying, health is wealth, and we're talking about career readiness. And there's a learning our kids are getting in a way that doesn't feel paternalistic, and it takes into their culture, the environmental factors. And the partner we have has just really been a great partner because they understood the vision I have for our food service program and the type of nutrition education and experience I wanted our kids to have.
So, how does this like tell us a little bit about the mechanics of funding this? Because one of the refrains, and I think this gets back to the comments around let's have an abundance mindset. Let's think big here. I think it's easy for people to say, well, that's great that you figured out how to do that, but we just don't have the funds for that, or how could we make that possible? Give us a little bit of a sense of scale. Like, how many meals are you all providing in a year to your students and families? And then how have you thought about funding this or making it possible from that side of the house?
Yeah, so we provide over 200,000 meals to our students
Woo.
annually. All of our students eat free, breakfast, lunch, and for those who are staying for the after school program, they receive a supper as well.
Wow.
And so the funding comes, from federal meal programs, but this is where partnership really matters in expressing to the leadership of our partner my desire to have more nutrition education. They brought to me the grant for fruit and vegetables. So there's a fresh fruit and vegetable program grant, which allows for at least twice a week our students to receive individually wrapped fresh fruits and vegetables so that they can learn about these new foods, get introduced to new cultures and how the foods may be prepared, and they get them at the end of the day so they can take them home, share them with their families. And we would have not been able to do what really is a snack program twice a
Right.
week with fresh fruit and vegetables if our partner hadn't understood what we were trying to accomplish in terms of the food service experience, brought this opportunity to us. And in doing that, we've been able to create this amazing salad bar program. We have smoothies that we do once a week, and it just introduces kids to new ways of enjoying food. They're children, they're elementary school kids. They may be picky eaters, but if we make nutrition and food just a part of how they understand their education, they're growing into adulthood, I think we just get healthier minds and bodies, and that's better for our society.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, let's because I'm conscious. I know you're busy, and I don't want to run out of time here. I want to talk a little bit about um, uh, sort of the operational side of this, some additional takeaways for others. Let's talk a little bit about um, just some of the practical realities around partnerships. So, sustainability, funding, scaling partnerships. How do you think about sustaining partnerships? I know we've talked about behavioral health, with touch of wholeness and open seat. We've talked about your food program. You mentioned like with the food program, you've got a mix of federal dollars, a specific fruits and vegetables grant program. How do you think about, and I know you all do a ton on the after school and enrichment programming side, which we didn't even get into. How do you think about funding these and making sure these programs and partnerships are sustainable long term? And is there an ongoing evaluation process each year to say, hey, these are the partnerships we need to prioritize, and these are the ones that didn't work out, and we need to deprioritize? Take us inside some of those discussions you have to have with your staff.
Well, I'll say that when it comes to our partners, when you have aligned partners who want to keep working with your school, they will bring opportunities to you. They will bring the opportunities to you so that the programming can continue. Now, if that doesn't happen, then we have to look creatively at other ways to source funding. And so we are a public school and we depend heavily on, federal and local funding in order to operate. But if not, then as the leader, well, as a community, we're always looking for grants and opportunities to fill those gaps. And like I mentioned, I think the food and vegetable program grant was an amazing example of how that has filled a gap for us. I would say that sustainability when a grant runs out is something that is going to depend heavily on community investment. I think that if we have staff, have parents, people who are bought into the program and they want it to continue, then that just means that I have more ambassadors, more voices, more champions to source other funding sources or creative ways to keep a partnership going. And that's also related to the parent trust and partnership piece as well.
How do you I wanna, touch on that for a second. How do you build trust? I wanted to ask you about this earlier. How do
Mhm.
you feel like you cultivate trust with your families in the community when you're either launching partnerships, bringing in new partners? Because to your point, the more bought in families and students are, the easier it is to go find the funding or the support to keep partnerships going.
Yeah. So the simplest way I can say this is, building trust requires you not just to listen to feedback, but to actually act on it.
That's the
Novel idea, but
yeah.
when I first came to GLA, we had lots of complaints about the food.
Mm,
And it's the same. The food service vendor has not changed since I got to GLA.
okay.
But what did change was the complaints that I was receiving initially were informal. We created really formal vehicles for people to give feedback and so that we can get real data from the parents and the students. And that really drove conversations with the partner around how this partnership has to change if we are going to continue. And parental trust when it comes to food and the type of experience their child is having is extremely important. And
Mhm.
so when we asked for the feedback, we actually acted on it. And parents could see the changes, students could see the changes. The fact that we have a salad bar, the smoothie bar that I mentioned, the fact that every kid knows that on Wednesdays it's Wing Wednesday and there's going to be their wings with their favorite sauces and it's a highlight to look forward to. The consistency, right? The variety of the meal program is something that didn't exist before I got here and it keeps kids engaged and excited about what we're gonna have for lunch today or what's for breakfast, or I'm gonna stay after school so I can get supper because I really wanna have, that
Right.
Alfredo today.
I wanna come for Wing Wednesday, sign me up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I when I have lunch with people on campus, I'm like, "Yeah, we can have lunch on campus." One of the things that's really unique about my school is not only do the students eat for free, staff eats for free as well.
Really? No way,
Yes.
okay.
And so that's a amenity, I think, that really helps create the type of workplace and culture that we wanna have here, and it gets rid of some of the stigma that may have been associated with, the cafeteria experience at a
Right.
public school. People here are clamoring for lunch every day. We look forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it sounds like a small thing, but I would imagine it's a retention lever. I mean, it's part of the overall staff value prop, staff culture, especially nowadays, food has gotten so expensive. I
So
mean,
expensive.
it's unbelievable how much people are spending on just basic groceries, and so to have your meals provided at your workplace, I mean, that's a serious consideration in terms of the value you add.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's been extremely positive. Since came to GLA and instituted this program, our staff retention has been over 75% every year. And just this last year, from last year to this year, it's been 88%.
Wow.
And I think that yes, so proud of that number, and I think that is due in part to my background in operations and just thinking about this not as just a school, but it's also an adult workplace, and while our community has assets, there is a grocery store right down the street, it makes it easier for a person to show up every day if, they don't have to think about lunch, right?
Totally. Yeah.
They can just come in, they know they can grab a great salad from the salad bar, they can get a breakfast bar, it's just one of those things that is the human focused aspect of leading a school and thinking about what are the ways in which I can remove complications, remove barriers. I think that's where my operations background comes
Mm.
in as an executive and thinking about how do I make people's lives simpler, remove things that don't need to be there so they can just get the work done. And people really, really appreciate the meal program and they actively participate in it, and I often get told they've never seen anything like this before at another school.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. Okay, so as we come to a close, I wanna ask you 2 things. First, I wanna ask, as you reflect on your journey with partnerships, and I know it's an iterative process and you all are continuing to think about how you use partners, what mistakes have you made along the way? Or things that you would say, "If I could go back knowing what I know now and the journey we've gone through to stand up all these different programs. Is there any advice you would give to another leader about, oh, I wish I had maybe spent a little more time doing this, or I wish I had thought about, the interplay between these two things. Anything come to mind there?
Um, so my experience has been oftentimes with partners, I don't wanna be the first.
Mm,
There's too much at stake for our kids and their school experience. You mentioned earlier guinea pigs, like, that's just not
yeah.
a quality investment, and so I think, it's been really important for me to not follow trends necessarily, when it comes to picking partners.
Right.
I did have an experience once where we partnered in a pilot with a partner for a quarter, and we didn't lose any funding, but what we lost was time. I
Right.
think valuable time that could have been utilized in a different way, and so the amount of time that we spent with this partner we can't get that back. And what it taught me was what's at stake for our kids means that when I'm picking a partner, they have to have some level of proof of concept, proof of results before we can say this is something we would invest in, even if it's just our time that we're investing.
Mhm. All right, second question. What's the what's the vision for how partnerships are gonna continue to evolve at GLA? Like, tell us something you're excited about that's on the horizon.
Yeah. So, one, you're invited to come visit us at any time. We have an amazing campus, and we are looking forward to opening up programming that we offer here at GLA to our broader community. Many of the programs that we offer, we often make them accessible to people who live in our broader community, so outside of GLA enrolled students. This past summer, we've been able to pilot some camp programs that are accessible to other folks within the community. And so we're really excited about that. The other thing I think I'm really excited about is the possibility of offering some level of adult education
Mm,
and workforce development for our community. I always say this is not just a learning space for children, it's a learning space for adults. I think we have a responsibility if we want to be a community anchor to be more than a school. And so for me, when I think about partnerships, is being open to the possibility of serving just more than the 576 students we have enrolled here and how we can utilize our space, our facility for more for the community.
I love it. All right, Ebony, last thing we ask every guest. Anything else we should link in the show notes for listeners? Any interesting books, tools, resources, otherwise that have been on your mind lately, or that you've found helpful as a leader that we could link in the show notes?
I could give some advice to other leaders right now, like in this moment. There are lots of books and leadership frameworks, but I think this moment calls for leaders to be really reflective about who they are as people,
Mm,
what their purpose is in this work, and having that guide really their leadership practice more than ever at this moment.
perfect place to end. Let's wrap with that. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Ebony.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Charter School Insider. This show is brought to you by BuyQ, the group purchasing organization specifically for charter schools. Want to learn how to maximize your school's purchasing power? Join together with thousands of other charter schools by visiting buyq.org/sign up. BuyQ's purchasing program is free and has no obligations or commitments required. If you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor and subscribe on your podcast listening platform of choice. If you have a question or feedback for us, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at podcast@byq.org. Thanks, and we hope you'll tune in for the next one.